Okay, I want to do a mic check and check to see if there's any looping. So I apologize. Okay, and then one more check. And one more for good measure. 3, 2, 1. Okay, well, it looks as though I've finally solved my little problem there. So without further ado, then, let's start our topic for this video, shall we? Okay, so essentially, this is going to be a very extremely sensitive topic to go over here. And so much so that I need to put a disclaimer right before we get into things, and that's that I am in no shape or form promoting or encouraging the use of tools which may give players an advantage in any sort of content, whether it be PvP, raiding, or other world activities. And I don't agree with witch hunting. I don't think it's a good tactic under any circumstances, and it should not be tolerated and handled with the utmost importance and careful hands. And just the reason why, like, this is so sensitive a topic is because it's, for one, it's against, the in-game rules which the developers of this game, put in place. But it's also because it involves some things that, certain people really enjoy, like about Final Fantasy XIV and whatnot. And so you see, the reason it can be so touchy and so sensitive for a lot of people is because essentially there are just things that happen outside the game that people bring into the game, and it helps actually enrich their experiences in most cases, but in others it can actually be pretty damaging to people around people, other players and such. And so, because of the nature of how sensitive this is, that's why I'm putting out this disclaimer here in the beginning and putting my personal stance here is that, you know, certain things are allowed within 14 and then there's things that are not allowed. And the developers have made it as clear and concise as they possibly can, but there are just some people at the end of the day who still don't get it and they need more clarification. And so that's what I'm attempting to do in this video here. I am not, like I said, promoting or encouraging such behavior or actions, and I'm not condemning people or groups. I'm not condemning the developers or anything like that, because that's the wrong way to go about this particular subject matter. And so, it requires a very careful and very observational viewpoint to be able to discuss this here in a way that which will make things understood precisely and maybe help clarify some things that people are just not understanding. And I'm not going to be biased, try not to be biased, I should say, but this whole thing does center around content creators, such as myself here, for example, who stream Final Fantasy XIV. That's where it all begins, is that it starts with an incident in which a content creator was involved, and this incident sparked the attention of other creators, and now it's just kind of spiraled out of control into this kind of chaotic mess that it is, when really, you know, it's just a misunderstood and misinterpreted subject by, this sort of, I don't know what to call this group without sounding condescending or just, what's the word? you know, rude or such, but it's just a very vocal group that has decided to take it upon themselves to cry wolf essentially and sort of play the victim and the blame game, which, again, this isn't the correct way to go about this topic. And it really needs to be done in a manner to which we can come together and be able to work together to prevent further such incidents. And now I will understand that some people just can't be reasoned with. I understand that fully. Like, no matter how many times you try to be rational and be calm about certain things, there are people out there who just refuse to listen to reason, to logic. And to those people, you're never going to get through to them, no matter how hard you try. So it's better that you just block these kind of people and move on with your day. Don't let them try to get to you, because that's ultimately what they want, is they want that attention, okay? And part of why this sparks so chaotically is because there's another group which wanted this to happen. They wanted there to be all this chaos and dramatic outcry going on. And it's just not the way that things should go and end up being in the end. So let's discuss. And again, I need to reiterate, this is in no means meant to, encourage any such behavior or invoke people to go and do stuff. Okay? This is purely educational and understanding. Okay? So before anyone tries to say anything like guilty by association, guilty by understanding what these things are, what they can do, I've already made it clear here that I am not endorsing or encouraging it. But rather, I'm explaining why such things are not allowed within Final Fantasy XIV and why the developers, feel like they're unnecessary. Or, in some cases, necessary. Now, that's a very big key word for you to understand as we go into this discussion here. Okay? So, let's first start from the beginning, the incident which started to spark everything. Okay, so there was a JP, Japanese player, okay, a streamer. He was jumping into the world race for the new Ultimate, which is high-end and game content, which is often a grand spectacle, which, it's kind of like a time-old tradition in 14, you could say, where free companies or statics will challenge each other to see who can get the world first victory dance in this particular type of content. And what comes with that is oftentimes, since it's something that they want to be remembered, they'll go ahead and stream it live for a broad audience. And oftentimes, as they're streaming, they're kind of negligent to a very specific rule that 14 has, Final Fantasy 14 has, and that rule is what kind of coincides with this incident. So the streamer, he streamed with something that's not allowed, okay? A third party software program. Now, the dev team has specifically stated that they are not going to support or get behind any third party software that affects the game in a negative light or just outright promotes cheating and basically toxicity behavior. And that's basically behavior that leads to harassment, bullying, and just pushing people away from this game, which the developers really don't want to happen. So, what ends up happening, okay? So this person is using multiple third-party softwares during his group's prog through the Ultimate Fight. Some of these add-ons are things that like enhance the visual UI aspect. Some of them track DPS damage output and performance. These things were on display as he was doing this. And that's wherein a report was made by a viewer. Okay. That's what you guys need to understand. This was a viewer. Now, could they have been a player of Final Fantasy XIV? Maybe. It's possible that they could have been. But we can't know very much because it's hearsay. For all we know, it could have just been some random, like, troll on the internet or whatever who picked up the game on the free trial account like a few days ago or whatnot. Just specifically for something, waiting for something like this, okay? It's all just speculation, it's all just hearsay. And we can't really be the judge to say which is or isn't. And there's even stuff going around saying that on, like, I guess a forum outside of Square Enix's privy, out of their control. There's a group of people talking about inciting such an incident as this. Now, that may or may not be true. It could have just been talk. Like like I said, there's no definitive way to prove like it is or it isn't. But it's the fact that what people are reporting is that this group was using it as a weapon to basically mass report. Now, that's not okay under any circumstance to do that, and it's also something that's against the rules of Final Fantasy XIV as well. You cannot threaten someone with mass reports. That includes whether you're a streamer or not. If you are caught issuing that threat that you'll mass report someone, you are going to be in serious trouble for that. However, in this current incident, whether this is true or not, unfortunately, the initial port was remade, and the streamer was in a clear violation of the terms of service, the terms of agreement to which they themselves agreed to when they made their account through Final Fantasy XIV. And this falls under stuff that people often neglect to read because, you know, you don't often think about these kind of things when you want to play a video game. You think about just jumping in, getting to the action, chatting with your friends, and having a good time. That's all you really think about. You don't think about the technicalities or the legalities of, you know, property and infringement within video games. You try to escape those things because those are the things that we oftentimes deal with in real life, and so we don't want to have to relive them in, an online digital world, which is meant to be escape for most people, but also as a hobby, something to be enjoyed. And so oftentimes people neglect to read this terms of service of agreement, which outlines and states, and it's written by the developers themselves. I need to be clear on that. This isn't just some random corporate baloney. This is the developers themselves who outlined this and stated they do not want these sort of behaviors and these actions allowed within their game. And that should you violate, your terms that you signed electronically, I should add, then you will face repercussions for that in the form of a suspension or a ban from Final Fantasy XIV, depending on the severity of the issue of which you committed an infringement on the agreement. So, understanding that here, let's go into the more broader terms of what that means. So essentially, they've outlined in this terms of agreement and this, um, you know, usage, I want to say, of you using their platform, you using their game and such, then yeah, it's very important that you really understand, like, what you're getting into when you sign that agreement. So basically, what it outlines is that you are not allowed to use third party software at all. Like, you are strictly consigned to play the game as it was intended to be. And because you agree to that when you sign and put the check mark electronically below, you are beholden to those rules, those standards which they have set. So, and that's where the whole drama comes into this situation here, is that we have people decrying that they weren't very clear, they were too vague on what they were, suggesting that's against the rules, that they didn't offer like a list of what's blacklisted and what's allowed, okay? And let me tell you, Okay, that even if they were to theoretically do that, okay, that's taking time out of development that they have to sit down and stop, doing what they're doing just to research and look up at all these different add-ons, what they do, how they interact with the game, and how they can be exploited, okay? And that's just really not something that they have the time to nor the want to do, you know. And that's why they have the task force for a reason to investigate these and then report back to them like, okay, so there's this add-on here, this software which allows a player to essentially do this in game. Now, do we say yay or nay to it? And the answer is always, I can guarantee you, the majority of the time, nay. We don't allow it. And part of that digs into company policy and their social image of how they're viewed, not just in the worldwide, but in their own individual culture. And let me tell you guys, okay, the Japanese culture is very strict and harsh on image, okay? So, for Square Enix itself, and for the Final Fantasy development team to get such a bad rap over something like this, it would really, really start to hurt the game in the long run. Like basically, for you to understand the severity of the implications here of such things, they could essentially get their business license revoked. Okay, and they could get their product taken off shelves, essentially, by their government. Okay, if their government had to step in because they were breaking laws. Okay, and that's basically the severe degrees that this could go to if they let it, which is why, again, they have the task force, the game masters, to handle these situations case by case. Now, it's important for you to understand that it's case by case basis. They're not just going on a spree, just going stream by stream, video by video. Like they're not. It's they're not. It's not their job to basically babysit us 24/7 and to monitor us all throughout the whole days, weeks, months, and the year just to make sure, that we're behaving, that we're not breaking the rules, you know. And part of that goes in as a trust, okay? They're trusting you as the player to be responsible, okay? And they really, really emphasize the trust aspect there. They know that this game is played by a lot of mature adults, okay? Or young adults in this case. They are expecting a level of maturity from their player base. Now, obviously, yes, there are minors who do play this game. I've met some, and I don't interact with them outside of just saying hello or partying up with them in a dungeon, and that's it. And that's as far as it should go. But To reiterate, yes, there are minors, there are kids who play this game, okay? So, they're not talking specifically to that sort of player, but they're talking to about the people who know better, okay? Who know better, who are people that know better, they know what they're doing, and they've been playing the game for a long time now. That's the people that they're addressing here when they bring in this level of trust when it comes to the rules, okay? And obviously, they're not expecting everyone to follow the rules, okay? They know there's going to be some sour grapes mixed in the whole vine, you know. They're not like naive enough to believe that everyone is just going to be a perfect little boy or little girl and just play by the book, you know, play by the rules. They're not as naive as that, which is why the rules exist in the first place and why they're enforced, okay? Is because they're not naive, they're not stupid. And let me tell you, Mr. Naoki Yoshida, live in front of an audience of probably millions of players across the globe, okay? He's sitting in front of a camera and he addresses everyone, each and every one of them that was viewing this or even watches the stream. And he looks at the camera, okay? Like I'm not joking or memeing here, but he actually looks straight into the camera as if he were looking right at you and says, "Listen, guys, okay, I know that you use these programs. I know they exist. And you know that they exist. So I'm going to lay a ground rule here, okay? This is where he lays the ground rules, okay? He says that our third party software, which this is add ons to people or mods, they are not allowed within Final Fantasy XIV. Period. Okay. That's his official statement, is that they are not allowed. Now he goes into further depth here. He says, now obviously there are some things which are not intentionally harmful. Okay, he does acknowledge that yes, there are creative and brilliant minds behind some of these add-ons which are not used with the intention to harm. Okay, but he has to strongly emphasize that it's a very shaky situation to go into if they were to endorse it, because then that could lead to someone, well, basically stealing assets from other games, like other companies, and then bringing them into the game to label um, as their own creative product. And that's where legal issues come into play here, is that, say, like, yeah, you're marketing this content, okay? You're saying that, yeah, I did this, I made this, okay? Then, okay, Square Enix reserves the right to review, okay, these softwares and these mods. They reserve the right to review and scrutinize them, okay? Because you're using their game and borrowing their assets as well and putting it into the game, okay, without their consent. And that's the big thing to understand here is a lot of this stuff is done without the developer's consent. And that makes it very not okay. Okay. And that's one of the reasons for it being outlawed as well, is because there's no consent from them saying, yeah, go ahead, do it. You know, they're telling you, like I said, the producer and director, Naoki Yoshida, sits directly in front of thousands, millions of players, looking straight at them through the camera and saying, don't do it. Okay? And then he further iterates again that he understands that's not everything's done maliciously, but they have to draw the line, okay? Because they are liable for any action that may hurt their company. Now, you may not care. Some of you may not care because you're not the developer. You're not the one that has to take the heat, you know. And that's just playing unfair, you know, and that's being selfish, is what that is. And yeah, you can argue that, yes, you pay for the service, okay, but that doesn't entitle you to be a jackass towards the developers who are trying, you know, they work hard, long hours, and push deadlines just so that you have the ability to play this game. So you are not entitled to be a jackass online and break their rules just because you pay for the game, okay? That does not give you the right to abuse their property or their assets. And that's what you need to understand here, is that you essentially own nothing in this game. They've outlined that even in when you, again, in this terms of service which you agree to, they highly outline this. You do not own any property, intellectual or otherwise, of this game. Okay. You don't own your character. You don't own, you know, um, this game. I mean, yeah, you buy it, whether it's physical or digital, and you can say, yeah, I own that game, but you don't own the assets to that game. You don't own your character. You do not own this space here. You do not own this couch. You do not own any of the minions you have, or the mounts, or the glamour you've collected. You own literally nothing except for the name that you make for your character. That's the only piece that you own in Final Fantasy XIV. Nothing else you own. Okay? And if you further read the agreement, it says that they can terminate your account at any time with or without notice. Okay? That part's very important for you to understand about this whole drama situation, is that it is stated in bolden letters, okay, that your account can be terminated with or without notice. And Square X reserves that right. Okay? Because, like I said, you own nothing in this game except for your avatar's name. That's it. That's all, the only piece of material you own. You own zero in this game. And you are, like I said, beholden to their rules. I'm beholden to their rules. And so this whole drama boils over because you have other content creators being put on a hit list, essentially, with people reporting, hey, I saw so and so on stream and he was talking about this program. I don't think this is safe, or I don't think this is something that's in game, Mr. or Mrs. GM. Can you please investigate and tell me if this is allowed or not? Okay. And that's usually how these reports go out. And then the GM, they'll investigate, okay? They're not going to report their findings back to the reporter, no, because that's not how this works in Final Fantasy XIV, okay? They don't get any sort of validation that the GM reported back to them, okay? The GM does their own independent investigation and then makes the judgment from there based on the rules which are written by the developers, okay? Like I've said earlier. So, if they see clear evidence, like I've said, that you or someone else has broken their terms of service and has used, third party or modding to essentially change the game without consent from the developers, like I've said, then you have broken your agreement, and that's punishable by account suspension. Now, this is actually a pretty lenient suspension, I will give you that. For most, it's pretty much just a 10-day temporary ban, and then you can come back after your 10-day suspension, okay? Now, that does increase, however, if you continue to persist in the behavior which got you banned in the first place, and you get reported a second time, then that's going to be an even bigger suspension where you may not even be able to play for a whole month, which means you just lost a month's worth of sub time because you decided to be, you know, a bad kid, you decided to be a bad apple. You decided that you thought you could be the cool guy and you just follow your own rules. Well, Mr. Cool Guy, how's that working out for you when you're living in the ditch? Not able to gain access to your little in-game house or your in-game waifus. Must feel pretty great, right? Well, that's just what happens. And this is where we get into, the player aspect of this whole situation, okay? I have noticed this for a while, a long while, okay? That some among my fellow content creators have publicly endorsed third party software and mods. Now, I don't agree with that at all. Okay, and the reason I don't agree with that is because not only is this against the rules, in some cases, it is cheating. In some cases, it is botting. In some cases, it is an advantage over other players. And in other cases, it's just plain unfair to another portion of the player base which cannot have all these nice things. And so this creates vitriol between players because they see these nice shiny toys, these cool, awesome features which they can't access to because they're not in the game. They're not officially recognized as features. And that's where another contention point comes in, is that some people try to, again, victim blame and say they like to point the finger, say it's the developer's fault, for this because they didn't implement this feature that I want. So I'm going to, complain and moan about it because they're punishing me because I like this feature which they won't implement. Which is one of the stupidest and immature, childish things that anyone could come up with to argue, okay? It is. Flat out. It's childish behavior. And how many times have the devs told you, people? If you want something implemented, you want a feature, you want to request a feature, go to the official forums, tell us about it. How many times have they told you that? Openly. Through live letters. Through interviews. How many times? So that refutes your argument right there that it's their fault for not implementing it, okay? When they've specifically told you, hey, we have this place you can go to if you want to talk to us directly and request something, okay? You have been given the tool to go do that. But what do you do instead? Oh, that's right, you do it behind their back anyway. Now listen, okay? It doesn't happen overnight that they can implement something that you want, okay? This company, while yes, they are rich, they have tons of money to just throw out into 14, but they don't for whatever reason, Don't ask me what that reason is. I don't work for them, so I couldn't tell you. And trust me, I have my fair share of gripes with that. You know, if you've been watching my channel, you'll see that I have lots of gripes against their corporate's greed. And that they should be investing more into Final Fantasy XIV, which is a game that's been highly successful and highly praised for them all the world around. Yet they can only do the bare minimum, it seems like, doesn't it? And that's because they have a staffing and a management issue. That's what that is. Okay. That's where the problem is when they can't implement something right away that you have to have immediately, or else you're not going to be able to play the game. Oh no! Stop being entitled. Okay? Stop being a spoiled brat. The world does not revolve around you or me, okay? We are entitled to nothing. I say that as a content creator because content creators are being attacked in this situation. But here I am laying down the line here that neither you nor I are entitled to anything. We are not privileged in any shape or form. No one is above each other in this game, as you can clearly tell. Not even popular streamers are above anything. If they were to get reported for something, then guess what? They get the same rules applied to them. Now they can cry about it all they want and say, "Oh, Square Enix banned me over something so stupid." Blah blah blah. Pity me. I need pity. Come, take my side. They can go ahead and do that all they want. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, as content creators, if you're going to do something that's against the developers' wishes, against their rules, and you didn't ask their consent, you didn't gain consent, then you're going to have to face the music like everyone else. Because you doused that fire, you played with it, you trickled it, tickled it, and now you're expecting, you know, people to pity you, to take your side, when essentially you incriminated yourself by streaming it, by putting it out there live. You did. And you know it was against the terms of service. You are not innocent in this case, okay? And like I said, I don't agree with the witch hunters either. It's pretty messed up that you have to feel like you need to bully people, especially people that are trying to share with you their gameplay experience online through streaming media platforms. It's pretty pathetic and it's pretty sad when people have to feel the need to bully a streamer just because that streamer does something that they don't agree with or they don't like. Okay? That's pathetic behavior. So I'm not taking their side, and I'm not taking the streamer's side either. Okay? Because both are guilty. They are. They're both guilty in this case. And now they're exuding shameful behavior. Now, what do you think the developers are going to take from this shameful behavior, you guys? You know what they're going to think? They're going to think exactly what I just called you. Entitled, spoiled brats. And you know what? They're not going to give you your features that you want so badly because you act this way. So, what I'm going to say to you, Final Fantasy XIV community, is adjust your attitude. Adjust your behavior. Maybe don't break the rules and play fair for once, content creators. And maybe you won't get bullied and harassed. And as for you people who disagree with a certain person's views or takes, you don't have to watch their video. You do not have to click on their video. No one's forcing you or telling you, hey, come watch this guy go off on this topic here. Listen to him, go off. Listen to this guy cheating. Let's look at this cheater, this guy here. No one is forcing you, okay, to watch their content. Nobody is. You took it upon yourself to click on their video and watch their content. And some people, I know, they can be downright nasty and mean. Okay? And that's part of the reason why I personally don't like MMOs. I never did. Never have. In fact, when I first started playing this game, I was very hesitant to pick it up because I know exactly how people act online. They don't act like normal, decent human beings at all, the majority of the time. They act entitled, privileged, like they're God's gift, like they are deserving of every single thing, and that if you don't conform to them, then they have the automatic right to be a shitty person to you. They have the right to gang up and bully you with their friends if you don't play by their book. Okay? And that's one of the disgusting, ugly sides of MMOs. That you do have the majority of communities being shitty that way. And like I said, not everyone is that way. There are still good people and still good content creators out there. They do exist. Not everyone's entitled, not everyone feels like they're above everyone. You're looking at one right here. I don't think I'm above anyone, okay? I'm just like you. And you're just like me. We're just average people trying to enjoy a game together to either escape reality or just to relax and enjoy a hobby. At the end of the day, that's all it is. And people that are gonna be entitled and spoiled and think that they deserve the world and more, well, they have no place here, okay? Just play flat out. They don't have a place here. And they shouldn't be spreading their toxicity in a place where people want to enjoy their time. Okay? And here's the thing about reporting, okay? If someone is being an asshole, yeah, they deserve to be reported. Now, if someone's just enjoying the game and having fun, but another person is being petty and jealous, then no, they don't deserve to be reported. But the person who's being petty does. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in right now, okay? Like I said, all of us are beholden to the terms of service of Square Enix. and they reserve the right to change their policy at will, basically, which is a term to say that if they feel like it, they can change the rules, and you can't say shit about it or do anything, except for, okay, there is something you can do. You know what that is? It's called unsubscribe. It's called withdrawing your money from them. That is something you have the choice to do. And that is essentially like giving them a middle finger without giving them a middle finger. Okay? So if you really want to choose to be someone who's so adamantly against their rules and their policies, then yeah, just don't play this game. Unsubscribe. And that's sending them the message, yeah, I don't like you or your game. So I'm taking my money elsewhere, okay? Money talks to these people, okay? And it tells them all they need to know. That's why 1.0 was such a huge failure in Final Fantasy XIV's timeline here, is because it was so bad and so janky, so laggy and unplayable, this game. And they were still continuing to play it off like it was nothing and saying, hey, look at this new shiny we got for you in game. Come play, come play. You know, that's what led to a lot of failure with 1.0, is because the developers of that time were cocky. They were arrogant. Okay. The director, producer, and probably some of the management, they were cocky and arrogant and just thought that they could get away with it and it would be fine. But the consumers voted with their wallets and said, you know what? No, it's not fine. I'm withdrawing my money from you. Screw this game, you know, and let it crash and burn. And it did indeed crash and burn. So if you really want to inflict the change, then that's one route you have, okay? Now, another thing I've been hearing is that people are saying they're going to keep spreading the usage and endorsements of this stuff. That's not the right way to go. That's stupid behavior. That's going to get you in hot water. You're going to get banned, okay? And they're not going to care. Because, like I said, that's showing them that you're just entitled, spoiled brats by doing that. So why should they take you seriously then, if you're going to act so immature? And I brought this up in another forum sort of place as well, is that they put the expectation on you that you would follow their rules. Okay, they trust in you to be an immature person and respect their house, their rules. Okay. Now, when you don't do that, you break their rules and you trash their house. And then when they tell you that they're upset and they're not going to allow you to do that anymore, and you lash out on them, then why should they respect you? Okay? Why should they return the favor to you when you treat them like garbage? You disrespect their rules, you disrespect their house, and you treat them like less a person. That's toxicity right there. That's an extreme level of toxicity. And you deserve all that's coming to you if that's the route you take to be. Okay? So if you can't extend the courtesy to them, why should they extend the courtesy to you? It doesn't matter if you're a streamer or not. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're famous or not. If you can't be a decent person and show courtesy, then why should they extend that courtesy to you? Answer that question to yourself. And then you can have a real discussion. Okay? Then you can sit at the table with them and discuss precisely what features you want implemented in the game. And they'll take you seriously because you decided to be mature about it and decided to take a different route rather than being spoilt and throwing a tantrum. So, with that in mind, I want to talk about okay, what's hot? Okay, what's something that people really like? Okay, let's go into the specifics of that. Now, what people want, okay, is they want a better training system. They want a system which will allow them to track their progress in learning a job, learning how to play a job, how to handle situations in content. Okay, that's something that's highly requested. And this is possible. Now, that doesn't mean they haven't attempted, okay? They did. That's why they created the Stones See Sky feature, okay? Is they implemented that so you could train. But unfortunately, what they neglected to do is show you actual like numbers with that to say, hey, this is your high point, this is your low point. Okay. And there might be a reason behind this, you guys. And what I think it is, the reason why they don't want to do this mainly is because they don't want people to feel bad. Okay. And yes, there are people like that who will feel discouraged and feel bad if they underperform. And that's what they're trying to avoid. Now, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't still do it, but they're just not sure what's a creative way to do it without making people feel bad about performance, okay? But that's why we have to put our heads together and work together to help them reach that creativity if they can't do it on themselves, okay? If they're struggling to find the creativity, then that's why player feedback exists. And why they can outsource to our player feedback for inspiration, okay? And that's why player feedback is a crucial element here when deciding what gets put out into the game. Because if they just wing it and go off of whatever they feel like, then it ends up not having a big turnout and it tends to fail the content or um, adjustment. An example of this is what happened with Samurai, for example. How they decided to remove the ability Kaiten, which is a very important ability for Samurai because not only does it help kind of manage their resource gauge, but it also enhances certain abilities to hit harder. And so that basically provided a bit of thinking and strategy to utilize this ability Kaiten at the right moment so that you could inflict the most damage possible against your adversary. And so a lot of, you know, higher end samurai players and even middle samurai players felt this loss pretty strongly because it feels like their job is just being dumbed down for the sake of being dumbed down. And I can tell you myself, as being a samurai main, that I was quite disheartened by the changes they made since the beginning of Endwalker. Like, I wasn't happy how they handled the third eye ability by removing the chance to sustain your health further so that you can do more damage, and instead replacing it with a shield, which is really the one of the weakest shields in the entire game. Like 10% of incoming damage. That is pretty pathetic, you know. You're going to end up with a dead samurai who gets hit for like over 100,000 damage. That minus 10 is going to leave them at like negative HP essentially. So that shield becomes effectively useless. And what does it grant instead of self-sustain now? Well, you get some Kenki, which, oh, guess what? Your Kaiten's gone, so what does that even matter, right? So yeah, that kind of irked me as a samurai main, why they decided to do these things in Endwalker. And honestly, in my previous video, I outlined to the developers what Samurai is at its core, in accordance to how it's been implemented in previous Final Fantasy games. Samurai is a job, basically, where you will have this buildup of power, of strength, as you continuously inflict hits on an enemy. And when that power or whatever reaches its peak or its height, then that's when a really powerful hitting attack becomes available, which hits like a truck, like a semi, and really chips down the boss's HP. And it feels so satisfying executing such things. And that is what Samurai is at its core in Final Fantasy retrospect. So, and as you can see, because of that example that I gave there, there's a lot of outcry on that as well. That people were not very satisfied with that, and hey, that's why we need to give them feedback in the first place so that they can understand, you know, what exactly we want. Okay? And like I said, that's just one example of many. People want a better training system, okay? So that they can track their um performance and be able to feel confident, I guess, stepping into those higher end contents such as Ultimate and Savage rating or even Extreme Trials. And I think that's the perspective that the developers should look at it from is that, yeah, maybe it sucks. It feels bad to underperform and not feel like you're doing your greatest, but you can always come back and try again when you're ready to, you know. There's no reason why people can't continue to keep trying. Now, sure, some people will have low self esteem or lack of motivation due to mental health. That's completely understandable. And that just means, that just tells, you know, you that things such as Ultimate and that's just not content that's made for them. It's not content that's intended for them. And that's not an elitist way of thinking, okay? I'm not saying that they should be excluded from anything. But the fact of the matter is that because they might be so low self esteem or unmotivated, it's just not content that's going to appeal to them largely at all. So it's it's difficult to work that out for the developers, I guess. They don't know how to put it gently, that it's okay if you can't you can do certain types of content. You can try the content when you're ready to, is the message that they should really be putting out is that there's no need to rush, because as the old saying goes, haste makes waste. You don't want to run into something which you're not fully prepared for, because that's where mistakes begin to happen, and it just creates a worse situation. So developers can do it. They can make a better trading system, and they have the means to do so. They just need to, you know, be a little more carefree and just say, hey, it's okay, you know, if you're not ready for something. It'll be there tomorrow. It will be there the next week. It'll be there the next month. you know, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And that's the thing that they should really strive for, the developers, when coming up with something like a new training system to help players improve upon their um, jobs, and improve upon their experience. Now, the other thing that players want is they want more cosmetics, okay? They want more clothes, more fashion. I completely get that sentiment. And they also want more role playing features, such as, the chat bubbles, which we see in game with NPCs a lot of the time. Square Enix can add that as an option. They can add those bubbles as an option for players to use as speech if they so chose to. And in fact, they just might do so, like I said, if you request it in a respectful way and, a more genuine way, and you don't demand that they do it now or you unsub, etc. Like, those are some of the other things that are hot on the list, is people want more cosmetical options. They want to be able to change their eye color in the station, or change, you know, their height, or, their face, or whatever. These are simple things that the developers can and will do as long as players put it out there that, yeah, this is what we want you to do, you know. And one of the things I've say in every single video I make is that they are listening to you, whether you choose to believe it or not. They are listening. There's always someone from development listening. And for us, particularly, like I said, in the Western NA side of things, we have Mr. Christopher Koji Fox as our unofficial director for NA. And usually he's taking probably small glances of what's trending and what's pretty hot in 14, so that he can relay that to, Naoki Yoshida's team and say, hey, I saw that this thing was really popular amongst our players. We should investigate this further and decide whether it's possibly something that can be done or not. So, there are people listening, rest assured, and that's something that you should keep in mind when giving feedback. And like I said, it really matters to them how you present that feedback. If you present it in a very precise, calm, and intelligent way, then they're going to take you seriously and they're going to listen to your feedback. But if you're just going to shout and yell at them with, your blood vessels bulging out, then they're not going to listen to you. And they're going to take it as complaining for the sake of complaining, and that people are just overgeneralizing or overreacting to it, which unfortunately is kind of the norm around here in 14 lately. It never used to be, okay? The community I grew with in 14 is a lot different from what the community is now. And that's just normal with any society, really. In real life, for example, is that the more things grow, the greater the greater they change, either for the worse or for the better. And unfortunately, I think as we've been seeing lately, it's for the worse, and that's pretty sad, honestly. But that doesn't mean that we have to be discouraged or like give up entirely. Like we can come to a consensus that what we all want is a better Final Fantasy XIV. And this can be achieved, but we have to stop clashing heads so much, you know. This isn't a rodeo ranch, you know, or like some dog fight arena. You know, it doesn't need to be like that. We all agree that we want this game to succeed and do better in all aspects, not just a single one, but all aspects. We want better and polished content. We want better options on how we can approach playing the game, and we all just want to have peace of mind. Like, we at the end of the day, that's all it is. We all just want to be able to come home from our busy days, whether it's from college, from work, high school, whatever, you know. We just want to be able to come back and relax in an online escape reality, you know. Be able to chat with people we know online or chat with people that we're friends with in real life in some cases and just have a good time playing Final Fantasy XIV. On that, we can all agree upon, and that's what we should strive to push forward out there. So, that's what I'm going to close out with this video here is that we can do better as a community. We can. It is possible. It's just we really need to sort out our bad apples from the good ones. We need to trim the sour grapes from, you know, or sorry, not sour grapes, but the bitter grapes. We need to trim out the bitter grapes from the vine before they taint the whole vine, etc. We need to work these things out as a community before, you know, we can sit at the same table as the developers and actually get things achieved and done. Because as it is right now, um, we're just sending bad messages to the developers, and that's not a good thing at all. You know, and in fact, it can lead to dev disconnect from the community, which that leads to very bad game play elements and gameplay implementation and design. When the developer has abandoned caring for the people that are playing their game, that's when it inevitably fails. So let's all get out there and just do our best to try and work out our differences, work out our problems. Maybe the problem is within ourselves, you know. Like, I know that's real life is kind of a struggle right now. It's not real great right now for some people, for a lot of people. And 14 is something they rely on. The one good thing they rely on. But unfortunately, because they rely so heavily on it, that tends to lead them to become, not so very great a person because they become codependent like it's a drug, you know, which is very unhealthy. And that's a sin of you know, MMOs of the past is that they used to sink their teeth into you and demand a lot of your time and demand that you be playing for so very long and for so many hours a day. Like the old MMO ways were basically like you weren't playing a game so much as you were working a job. And Final Fantasy XIV doesn't want to be like that at all. That's not um, their design and their development process for the game. They don't want to become that vicious, predatory type of game. They want you um, to take care of yourself to be healthy. And that's why they frequently ask that you take a break here and there. And then, once you've had your break, to come back, and play again. Like, there's nothing bad in that at all. But at the same token, like I said, they can improve things across the board as well so that when players do come back, from the breaks and stuff that they take, they have something to look forward to, rather than something that they might dread and something that they'll be kind of like rolling their eyes saying, oh boy, here we go again. You know, it's another ultimate. It's another raid. Oh, it's another primal. Oh, it's another fishing thing. Oh, another crafter thing. You know, they want to be surprised. We want to be surprised when we come back. We don't want to just be like, oh, well, nothing's really changed. It's still the same as it always was. So I think the developers can improve on that aspect by bringing more life to this game, like beyond like raiding, beyond you know, extreme trials and all that stuff, which they constantly repeat on this continuous treadmill, this cycle, like if they can do that much, provide more rather than less, then we'll have a really strong uh game and a strong community. But right now, things have just not been real great in real life or, here in 14. There's been some pretty strong contention and clashing going on, so hopefully it can sort itself out and we can just all forget about this mess, and later on maybe we can have a good laugh together about and say, gosh, I can't believe we actually experienced that, we went through that, thinking back, yeah, that was just pretty silly. It was pretty dumb and immature, we were just, you know you know because that's how can people grow, how communities grow, as you just learn to look back on things and reflect, and I think that's what we seriously could use more of in this community. Is we need more reflection, more going back and thinking, that was a thing, and acknowledging, that, yeah, we can be better, we can be stronger if we uh move on from it, So that's all I basically have to say for this video. If you sat through this, um, I guess I want to say like hour and a half long rant and discussion, then my hat's off to you, and I hope that you can contribute to the discussion and put in some creative thoughts and essentially, help the developers help you, and in turn, help us content creators get more of the message out of what you want, in a positive and constructive way. And I will leave you guys on that and hope that you're all safe, you're all doing relatively well, that whatever struggles or troubles you're facing, that you just know you're not alone, and that things will look up. It takes time, it doesn't happen immediately, but things will look up. May you guys ever walk in the light of the crystal.